You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cricket Podcast, where we are shamelessly selling out to the Indian cricket team in pursuit of more YouTube subscribers. On this episode, we've got more Border Gavaskar Trophy chat. The Aussies are incandescent at, everything. That's hilarious, and we'll be talking about that in detail. We've also got news from the WPL auction, which took place today. There's a few people who have made some serious bank there. And for the first time in a little while, we'll be talking about the England men's team, who are preparing to dish out some baseball over in New Zealand. I'm Jack Hope. I'm joined by Max Rowe-Brown. How are you doing, Max?
Hello. Yes, very good. Very good. Thank you.
And Ross Legg. How are you doing, Ross?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. Very excited to talk about what is a groundbreaking day in cricketing history, I think.
Yeah. Why is it a groundbreaking day? Well, what broke most ground, do you think, for you?
It's the start of the Pakistan Super League, isn't it? Oh, no, it's the Women's Premier League auction has kicked off. As you said, players have made some serious bank.
Yeah. They had, just before we get going, I think we'll do Border Gavaskar Trophy first. If it bleeds, it leads. And Australia are bleeding tears. Does that work? It doesn't really work. A reminder that you should like and subscribe to the episode. And why don't you tell some friends about how good we are? Just like, drop it into a conversation.
Back to the good old days, word of mouth.
I've heard this, or I've been listening to this really good cricket podcast called The Cricket Podcast. You can find it on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and that's wherever you find your podcast. That's what you should say there. Yeah, use that line.
And they're on social media at The Cricket Pod on Twitter and Instagram and all that stuff.
That's really good, Jack. But can you just can you do my monthly appraisal now, please?
That's all good. We've got a couple of other bits as well. We've got some coffee stuff and Manscaped, but we'll talk about that later on in the show. Border Gavaskar Trophy, Max. We didn't get your thoughts. I mean, obviously, everyone knows that Australia were terrible and that they're sad, and that India were pretty good. Ross and I gave the pitch the thumbs up on the last show. Which has also been a little bit of a talking point, and I'm sure it'll be a talking point here. But what were your general impressions of Australia's subsidence on that day 3?
Yeah, well, we caught up, didn't we, and talked about it after day 2. And you asked me whether I thought it would be an innings defeat, and I said it might be. I didn't think it would be over in half a day. That was embarrassing, really, wasn't it? A real they just gave up, and that's not a great way to. What I was saying was that they needed to at least show some fight to get themselves into the series and give themselves a chance. They did the exact opposite. And all the stuff that you mentioned with basically the Australian media losing their minds about absolutely everything it's not going to help, is it? It would be quite a comeback mentally from here to come and win the second test. But it is Australia, so they are the kings of the mental game. Perhaps we'll see.
Are they?
Yeah, I thought so. On closer viewing, maybe not.
I think that's marketing, to be honest. I think, back in the day, it's like saying, I don't know, England are the... I don't know.
They were kings of the mental game because they were so good at actual cricket that it was actually nothing to do with the mental side of things. It just was what came with them being naturally better than everyone.
Yeah. I think it's good marketing. Ross, India worker. Do you have any further reflections? We talked about it in a little bit of detail on the last one, and we'll look forward to. There's some other news that's come out of this test, but just to finally cap off test number 1. Did you have anything else that you thought?
I think just from the selection side of things from Australia, it's really difficult to come back from those things. I think from a bowling perspective, it's probably not as drastic for them. But if you think around batting is a confidence game. Joe Root said that batting is a game of failure, pretty much. And when you drop someone like Travis Head, you've got big question marks over David Warner, etc. You don't want to be going into the second test match when you're 1-0 down in conditions you're not very well suited to, when you are lacking confidence or have just taken a big dent in that confidence. And I think Australia's selection policy has obviously backfired as they've lost that test match. But I think it's going to have further ramifications throughout this test series.
Well, let's get into that. But I think first, let's do the media and some of the outcries about it. What's really struck me about this, the Australians, I'm talking about the pitch and the conditions and the sort of the Aussie whinging that we have heard, mainly from the media and not the team. What struck me was that like they don't realise how good they got it in that test. I genuinely think that, having watched like a lot of India at home, that pitch on the scale of what it could have been was on the relatively tame end. I guess Australian cricket media and Australian cricket support in general is probably. It's probably fair to characterise it as being quite inward looking. They really care about the Australian team. It's the country's team. It's the main thing that they do, isn't it, on an international sporting front? Maybe a little bit of rugby, but the Aussie cricket team, a big deal. But it is really the Aussie cricket team that they're interested in. It's not, they're not watching a lot of India, England, or India, Bangladesh, or whatever. And I really didn't think the way that pitch turned out that there was that much wrong with it. I mean,
teams were opening with seam bowlers. They're opening the innings with seamers.
Yeah.
That's one indication.
In a sense, like what do you actually want from the wicket? If you're complaining, if you are an Australian, I'll ask you this, Ross, pretend you're an Australian. Like, what do you think that you should have got out of that wicket that you didn't get?
I think I'd want like some more bounce coming through, probably like an eye height, just like I do back home. That's probably what
no, but like you're away, you're in India. Like, what are you expecting?
You're expecting it to turn first and foremost,
Yeah.
And you're not expecting the pitch to disintegrate on the first day, but you're expecting that the spinners are still going to probably bowl the majority of the overs. If they weren't expecting that, right, then they wouldn't have picked only two seamers. They picked Cummins and they picked Boland. So that was a tick in the box. So that's not a surprise. They also replaced people with poor record of playing spin in Asia. Travis Head dropping out the side. So they were expecting it with kind of Renshaw or Hanscom coming in. And they were also worried, concerned about the left-hander situation, right? They were just, look at the pitch. Yeah. Well, that's it. And they looked to address that with their selection. So I don't think there was any surprise from the Australians. I think they got what they were expecting and ultimately just didn't deliver.
Yeah. I do think, to sort of play devil's advocate against myself a little bit, though, that in the run-up to the match, like India did actually try and doctor the pitch. Like it turns out that it didn't it didn't really make much. It didn't make that much of a difference and the pitch was fine. But like
watering half of it.
Watering certain parts of the pitch and like being meticulous about which areas you roll. Is that is literally there's literal evidence from impartial people at the ground saying, they're like, I'm watching this and they're doctoring the pitch.
I mean, I assume what's happened is people have seen those pictures and they've written all their articles in advance about the state of the pitch, and then it's turned out not to be that bad, and now they're stuck with stuff that they've already submitted to the editors.
Like I know, I do think that's I mean, like, we'll bang on about it here. We'll probably talk about it in the future as well. But I get the point that, like, who is it to judge whether a pitch is good, and why should us three in our bedrooms or living rooms be passing judgment on what is or isn't a good pitch? I mean, it's an abstract concept. I think you can only reply to that from a personal point of view, and I don't think it is good cricket. Or good sport in general, if people who are not participating in the game have a bigger impact on the outcome of the match than people who are, or if they try to have an impact on the match that would be greater than the actual players, which I think is quite clearly what happened. But there
is a level of difficulty you should expect playing cricket overseas, though. Like, it's the nature of.
I totally agree with that. I mean, that's why I sort of asked Ross, like, what should Australia have been expecting? And I think Ross sort of gave the answer that they would expect a pitch to. It's hot in India. Like those red clay pitches, they do disintegrate. They do take spin. India have got two good spinners. Like they should be expecting the whacker for sure. India should be going out of their way to make the game
no one wants to
easier
be going
for the
around
opposition.
The world. No one wants to be going around playing
as well
on a drop-in pitch that's the same in every country. That's really boring.
Yeah, for sure. But that and if you were to normalise wickets across the world, in a sense, that's doctoring too, isn't it? But like, let's maybe just take a slightly more standard approach to preparing a wicket. Like if you're going to water it, water the whole fucking thing. If you're going to roll it, roll the whole fucking thing. It's those kind of things. Also, like I heard some other bits, which wasn't really whinging, but I think it's kind of going out of your way if you're India to really, really make it difficult for India, for Australia, to an extent, which I'm.
It's unnecessary.
With.
Unnecessary.
On day 4, Australia asked if they could have a net on the pitch. You hear about this?
Yeah,
I did. Yeah.
And the local cricket board said, yeah, no problem. We'll do the facilities for you. It seems that somebody higher up intervened and they watered it overnight. So
it wasn't just that though, was it? It wasn't just that.
Oh, go on. Was there more?
So they asked for a middle pitch. They then watered it all, so they wasn't going to play like a used pitch, which they wanted to prepare on.
Yeah.
And then someone watered the practice nets, so they couldn't even go and have a practice in the nets. So that's how that was.
Yeah, I mean that
that
I think is pathetic. And Australia not going to do a tour match because they said, what's the point? They'll just roll out a green seamer. Again, I think that's. Like, is it necessary?
That's
if you want to have a
problem,
sport, if you want to have a good sport, it is a wider problem. I mean, it happens everywhere. But if you
it's a wider problem than like the specific issue of pitches. It's more of a sporting integrity question of like, what do you want to get out of teams coming on? Do you want a competitive nature? Do you want to have teams actually be able to get better at playing cricket away and see more spectacles, or do you want to just see teams rolled over in 2.5 days? That's a separate thing from the question of, is a pitch good or bad? Should it turn loads? It's it's a little pathetic, isn't it? Let's be honest.
I'll say I've got 2 more things, and I want to say this like as people who are basically neutral in this, and maybe want India to win actually more than they want Australia to win. I don't think it had any impact on this game. I think we are talking here in more general terms about like what is and isn't okay like where should there be regulations?
It's about the future of Test cricket.
Basically that's what the conversation is. And the other thing which I thought was quite funny, and I'm talking about this more in jest than anything else, is that if you're an India fan, I don't think at the moment you can be going around giving it the we're one of the greatest teams of all time if this sort of thing is happening. Like, regularly.
You've got to judge everyone by the same metric.
Yeah,
and the people who are saying New Zealand only got to the World Test Championship final because they won all their games at home. Yeah. That's literally the thing. Yeah. I mean, I saw tweets after the game from people saying that India should host the rest of the world 11 because they're so good at home. Like that's the future. We should be. Yeah.
I think Cricket View named a team,
and we'll pick Pakistan.
Crazy Crick Johns or one of that were like, well, that's a problem. In the first place, if you can play rest of the world 11, you've probably got 2 or 3 Pakistan players make it in, which undermines the point of a rest of the world 11, doesn't it? If you can't pick them, especially for Indian conditions. But also, like, maybe instead of making the rest of the world, select an 11 players that that won't even want to play together, won't want to go there because they know what's going to happen. They'll just
team chemistry is going to be all off.
Yeah, they'll get humiliated on a terrible pitch. No one will be able to pick the team. The team would have like Shakib and Mehdi Hassan in. They wouldn't. Nobody picking the rest of the world 11 would actually pick those players because cricket politics. It would be like they'd probably pick fucking Travis Head, wouldn't they? Maybe instead of that, India should just pump the brakes slightly on Project Bunsen and see whether teams can win there. That's all I say. Like if you do want to see more competitive tests in India, there is a way to have that. Which is
and India would probably still win. That's also the piece. What we're saying is that India are a phenomenal cricket side. There is no need to go out of your way to doctor some of these pitches. However, for this test match, they've just smashed up Australia. It literally made no material impact on the game. They just fundamentally outplayed Australia.
It's also worth pointing, like there are people in the English commentary who's we talked about it a few weeks ago, like people complaining that we've allowed Steve Smith to come and play for Sussex for a few games before the Ashes.
Why
are we doing that? We're very much not in that camp. Like
But there are people saying it.
But there are people saying it. Like people
and that
put
is
it everywhere, and it's just
stupid as well.
Yeah, it's just nonsense. Like we want to see some advantage for home teams, but you've got to give someone a fair crack to come and give it a go. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah, and this is not just a commentary on India, right? It is every single country who is doing this in their home conditions. England have done it in the past. Australia do it an awful lot. New Zealand do it an awful lot. Look at the pitches Bangladesh rolled out for some of the one-day internationals before.
They're as bad as anyone.
It's not an India problem. It is a cricket problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, competitive test series are great, but it is a problem that we've had like 4 of them in 20 years. Maybe that's an exaggeration, but we've got 2005, the last Border Gavaskar Trophy, you'd probably say was in there. 2004 in India. England, South Africa have had some ding dongs, haven't they?
But generally quite similar conditions between the two countries.
Yeah.
That's something that's not used enough. Ding dongs. I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Right, old ding dong.
Right. We've got next thing that I noticed, and this is quite a quick one. Justin, why the fuck do people want Justin Langer back? It's Australia's.
Come on.
He lost twice at home. He lost twice at home to India. Like, why do they think he's the solution? Like, what's your thought process? Because someone explain this to me quickly.
So the whole bit I mentioned on the last pod was that there was loads of commentary going around. It's like, it seeped in. All the mind games had seeped in to the Australian dressing room because it's now player led, and they needed a figurehead like Justin Langer to be like, block it out.
They need a Mourinho character.
Yeah. And they lost twice at home with the man in charge to India.
Yeah,
India's second string.
Can we go back to basics with this? It's one Test match that they've lost, and
they've gone completely bad.
Australia's like reaction levels since Sandpaper Gate, where they banned Steve Smith and Warner, etc.
It's ridiculous.
It's off the scale in terms of the old reactionary meter. It's off the scale.
They should be more like England, win one Test out of 17, and then make a decision about moving on. There's absolutely, we've got enough evidence now after 16 defeats in 17 matches to move on from this man called Chris Silverwood and move on from Root. We know that we can make the call now.
Yeah.
Don't do it after one match.
Bring back Will Pukowski. See how many more concussions he can have. No, don't do that. No.
They are. It's crazy. Can anyone see a way that India don't win this 4-0?
I don't think we can completely write off Australia. I think as much as we laugh and joke around, they have got some high quality players in there. They've got the best batsman probably of all time in their lineup. They've got the current ICC.
They don't have Don Bradman. So I'm breaking that up.
If Don Bradman was batting today, then he wouldn't do very well. I don't think Steve Smith batting back there would do better than Don Bradman.
I don't think so. Right, so we're going to have to get into this now. We have to get into it
covered pitches. What's your basis? Bigger bats.
What's your basis for this assumption?
He was bowling. He was batting against not very good players, was he?
So was everyone else, and they were averaging like 50 at best. Yeah, he averaged double the next best player.
I reckon in a hyper. Can we get AI to do this? Could we potentially
just ask ChatGPT to write?
I mean, I think if you literally got 1938 Don Bradman without any netting or anything like that, and just dropped him in, I grant he'd probably only average 40 or something like that. Like he might not be. He'd be better. He'd be only playing without a helmet.
Averaging 10, am I? I'm just saying Steve Smith would do better.
He gets access to modern day coaching, modern day stats, modern day. Well, he's in modern day equipment and pitches and all the rest of it. Dietary,
he's in the 70s or 80s, I think.
Everything, the lot.
Yeah, I think he's in the 70s. I think
for someone you've never seen bat, I think you play it. I'm very confident in my money.
The guy got 300 in a day once.
I'm very confident in my money going on Steve Smith outscoring Don Bradman.
People were still bowling pretty quick in those days.
Yeah, have you not heard of the body line?
I'm just saying
without helmets. Didn't even wear helmets.
Yeah, but this is the best thing, right? Let us know in the chat. Let us know in the chat who you think is better. Don Bradman in today's scenario. Would Don Bradman do better than Steve Smith? No. And then back in the day, Steve Smith would score more runs than Don Bradman.
Never used sandpaper either, Don Bradman. Documented.
Well, I'm Max.
What was your point, Ross? How are Australia going to get?
Yeah, so
they're going to
yeah,
they're going to get the second best batter of all time.
yeah, okay, they're going to get the
TBC.
TBC.
We'll see what the chat says.
They've got Marnus. They'll probably bring Travis Head back in. I can imagine they're going to bring Cam Green back in as well. I think that their spin bowlers were okay. I thought Todd Murphy did well on debut. I thought that
Mine
Nathan
won't be any worse.
Yeah, Iron underperformed, if anything. So hopefully he only gets better. And then I think they'll bring in Stark, who might have a little bit more penetration than Boland did. And they've also got Uzi Khawaja at the top of the order. I don't think it is complete.
Someone could go out there and score 150, 200, and that would give them a chance.
Yeah, I mean, it's theoretically possible, isn't it?
Yeah, I think 3-1 is probably where is more likely than a 4-0 is in my head.
I think it might. I mean, so Delhi's traditionally a black clay pitch. You never really know what the groundsman's going to do, as we sort of discussed at length. But
leave the sprinkler on.
They prove that I would speculate that will probably suit Australia a little bit more, maybe a little bit less spin, maybe a little bit lower, a little bit slower.
I mean,
so maybe that will help them.
The chances of not a 4-0 have decreased, obviously, since today's news.
What was today's news?
That the third test is being moved.
Oh right, yeah. We'll get to that. I think Cam Green, it's just on team news. Cam Green's got a finger injury, hasn't he? And they're doing a session against quick bowling later in the week, which will determine his fitness. But he has batted against spin and he's fielded and he's bowled. So yeah, we'll see about that. What's interesting, they've been talking about maybe dropping Warner.
Head coming in for him and moving Renshaw up to open.
Yeah, which I think's a little bit of a wild card. I think that'd be kind of Warner doesn't have a great record in India or away from home.
I didn't realise how stacked his record was in Australia.
It is, yeah. He's a home. He's a bully.
Yeah.
But it's still, I don't know. I still feel like that after one test would be, it would be a lot of chopping and changing. Also, they've got I can't remember his first name. Kuhneman, though, is the name of the guy. Yeah, he's replaced Swepson, who's gone to have a baby. Or his wife's going to have a baby. I don't think Mitchell Swepson's going to have
I don't think Australia are going to miss him much either.
I mean, India, we assume, will probably be roughly unchanged later in the week. You go on, Ross.
I also think that people, what I've find a little bit disrespectful to India when people start talking about this kind of stuff, and is how good people like Mohammad Siraj and Shami actually are in their own backyard, right? India have produced some high quality seam bowlers that do trouble, and they took 6 wickets, I think, between them, 7 wickets between them in this test match, or the last test match, and yeah, they offer something different and offer that threat. And if India's openers can't deal with that, then you shouldn't even be starting to think about Jadeja and Ashwin. Like, you need to be dealing with the upfront threat of Shami and Siraj.
Max, you talked about it a little bit. They've moved the third test, haven't they? This is the last bit of Border Gavaskar Trophy news, I think. So Dharamshala off this, which is a shame because that looked like a proper beautiful ground,
isn't it?
Himalayas in the background, is it?
Yeah, lovely.
At altitude. It turns out, maybe someone else has done a bit more research into this story than I have, but they have recently redeveloped the stadium and they had to relay the outfield.
Yeah.
They've tried to relay the outfield in the middle of the winter.
In a mountain.
Been foggy in a mountain. Yeah, it's been foggy and cloudy, and there's not a lot of sunlight all day, so there is no grass on the outfield. They've only just discovered this, it seems. Who could have foreseen?
Well, I've got
there would be extreme conditions in the winter up a mountain.
I've got the BCCI statement here. It says, owing to harsh winter conditions in the region, the outfield lacks sufficient grass density and will need some time to develop fully. In other words, it's not fucking ready yet.
Yeah. I assume the grass just hasn't taken properly, and you can't. It would be too dangerous to play. It seems a bit. It's not like it's the wrong decision or anything, is it? If it's not ready, but it does seem like a bit of a lack of foresight on their part to think that was going to work. But people say there's another one in the list of controversies, isn't it? Oh, moving it to indoor. Ashwin's got an average of 12 or whatever because he's taken 18 wickets in 2 tests. They've only ever played 2 tests there.
There's one.
It's nice to have Test cricket at places that don't normally get it. I don't think that's a big deal.
In one of the tests, I think it was against New Zealand, he took 13 wickets and 2 run-outs. I mean, that's probably...
Get your money on him for MVP.
60. That's either 2/3 or 100% of the runouts Ashwin has ever had in Test cricket. I reckon, coming in one match there. So he averages 12 with the ball. Throwing those 2 wickets is down to about those 2 runouts is down to about 10.
We're looking at Scott Boland figures.
It's pretty nuts. Is it indoor or indoor A? That's one for the chat.
I don't know. Ask the chat.
Yeah. Ross, thoughts on that? Do you think they should have moved it to a different venue, or do you not?
I like the lottery selection, if I'm perfectly honest. Like, it makes things far more interesting. Like you talked about it before. Like, cricket scheduling is a joke at the best of times. The fact that they could just move a test match like this is, just really quite interesting. I think.
I think it's.
They obviously had it planned as a backup because. Randomly go. Do you fancy a test match, Nicola?
I think it's.
Lads, we've only got 10. Has anyone got any mates who can host a test match?
It's a really amateurish thing to have done from a board that's typically plans things through quite a lot of detail. I think the BCCI. I mean, they wind people up. I don't. Okay. I don't think you would say they were bad at their jobs, though. They make a lot of money. They field a pretty good team. They run the best tournament in the world.
They did a faux pas on not the last IPL, the IPL before, didn't they? When they decided mid-tournament just to move it, and then everyone got COVID. That wasn't good.
I mean, I guess
that's a blemish.
That was poorly planned. Maybe scheduling is just what they can't do. I think I've heard in general that attending tests in India is quite a poor experience as well. I mean, if you have to move a test, you have to move a test. It happens, doesn't it? But I think to sort of, as you say, Max, clearly have had it in mind that they might need to do this for a fair while, to have prepared or to have tried to play a test match up a mountain in the middle of the winter. There's some. It's a bit lax, and I think in general we should call that out as poor. I also think it's, if you're trying to market the sport and sell the sport, and basic things like you're trying to schedule your stuff in advance.
There's going to be a lot of people who plans to go there.
Yeah,
are stuffed.
Well, that's it. Having a low
India's quite a small country, though, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem.
They're building a big new road from.
Randomly moving stuff around all the time. I do think it's an odd way of going about things. Like, why are we not? I saw a clip of Kohli talking about this 2019, I think, about how he found it frustrating as an Indian player to have to go to all these different venues. Like, you can't, you in a sense never feel like you're fully at home because you're playing in 20 different venues across India. Over your career. He was like, I think we should have 5. I mean, 5 might be a bit much, as you say. India is fairly populous and has a lot of big cities, but maybe if you do like 10,
one for every IPL team.
Yeah, and you'd like schedule over a World Test Championship cycle, you can probably get most of the venues in there, can't you? I don't know. I'm just.
I think we should get given an opportunity to be cricket administrators. That would be good.
Yeah, you've gone in for this, aren't you?
I just think genuinely, what is the path to becoming head of the ECB? Because that's why I'm after.
I heard a cricket podcast with 2 other white blokes is a good start.
Yeah, that's what they were looking for.
Jobs for the boys. Jobs for the boys.
BCCI absolutely all over us at the moment. Should we take a break, fellas? And then we're going to come back. We'll do WPL auction news, and in part 3 we'll do England.
Very good.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.